Network to the world. Subscribe now to the Hot 97 YouTube channel. It's Ebro in the Morning with Laura Stiles and Rosenberg.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, today's guest with Ebro, Laura, and Rosenberg is Dr. Janice Johnson Diaz. If you've been following the show for a long time, we had her daughter on some years ago, Marley Diaz, who started a book club and was organizing books written by Black authors about Black characters and Black stories at the age of like 12 or 13 years old. Her mother is this phenomenal woman who has just put out a book, Dr. Janice Johnson Diaz. What's the name of the book again? It's about deliberately raising the best human you could possibly raise.
Yes, but that's not the title, but I really like that. No. It is called Parent Like It Matters.
Parent Like It Matters.
How to Raise Joyful, Change-Making Girls. And it does. It chronicles some of what my daughter has been doing, which she's been doing since 10. And my own work with the Grassroots Community Foundation, helping caregivers really understand that if we want the world to be a good place, we have to invest in ourselves and our children, but we also have to pay a lot of attention so that we don't end up with grumpy leaders in the world, that we have healthy, happy people
now
doing things.
I thought it was great to have you on because both Laura and I are raising daughters. But also, before we get going, how in this book, what if you're raising a son? How is it different?
Well, there are a couple of things. This book is applicable for boys, but I'm a research scientist. I'm also an associate professor of sociology at John Jay, and I try to stay close to the research so people understand. So this book has a combination of narratives, my own life story, what the research says, the public health, the education, the sociology research, and then 65 stories. And so I really focus in on girls, but my second book is on boys, and it takes some of these lessons. But where it's different is that in the society all across the globe is that girls and women are secondary citizens in all kinds of ways, socially, economically, politically. And if you as a caregiver don't understand that and you don't explain that in small and incremental ways to your daughters, is that they will begin to think that the ills of the society are somehow faults of their own, rather than structural issues that are built into the way the society is formed.
That's powerful. And now in the book, because you are raising a young Black woman, are there differences when you're raising a young person of color who also happens to be a young lady versus raising someone who is not?
Yes, there are huge differences. Our programs have serviced Latinas, whites, Asians, and others. These set of narratives, sometimes Jason Reynolds says, I want people to kind of default Black. We don't think about Black being a universal standard. Oftentimes we're talking about women. We're talking about all the women are white and all the men are Black. But it is different if you're a Black girl because, and especially if you're Black, Latina, or combinations thereof, because of the specific kind of, again, the structural issues, the anti-Blackness that is present, the anti-girlness. And when those things meet a space, Black girls face all kinds of ridiculousness. In the book, I narrate children who have been told that their beads are too loud in the year 2020 and that they need to move from the classroom. I narrate my own daughter's afro being told that she takes up too much space. Black girls' glasses as being too loud. Glasses don't speak. And so these kinds of things, again, if caregivers explain and talk about racism in the terms of niceness or meanness, that it doesn't get kids very far. If caregivers talk about the fact that racism is some kind of personal failing of teachers or friends, that it doesn't get our girls very far. What they really need to understand is the little ways in which the system maintains this anti-Blackness, anti-girlness, is pro-misogynoir. Girls and families have to start getting this language into themselves in ways that makes it easy. And so your teacher could be wonderful and still promote racist ideas and sexist ideas. And when kids know that, they won't be trying to change their hair, change their bodies, change themselves, because they recognize that no matter what changes they make, it will never satisfy the system. So their biggest thing that they can do is to really lean into who they actually are.
Go ahead, Laura. I'm sorry.
in my circle of my new circle of parents, specifically with mothers with daughters, they always push how powerful affirmations are to their daughters.
Yes.
That's not something I grew up with, but do you believe that it's is effective and important? Because I see the difference. Like when I look at my daughter now, growing up, my mom used to be like, "Oh, you're so pretty, you're so pretty," but now I tell her, "You're strong, you're smart." I want her to get those things. I continue to say it in English and Spanish, but talk to me about affirmations and how important they are.
Yeah, so in the book, I talk a lot about affirmations. Affirmations have shown to be really, really essential in terms of all of us and our sense of self. So we distinguish, like, our self-esteem is really essential for who we are, right? The things that we say, the messaging. So when you're not with your daughter, they need to feel like they have the presence of more than themselves out there in the world. So something comes and there's a crisis or there's a challenge, they can say, you know what? I am strong. I am brave. I am smart. And my daughter has been doing her affirmations since she was 13. And I always encourage parents to have affirmations that are not just about the individual. So you say, I am this and I am that, but also I'm a part of something. Because what we know is that when people feel a part of something, they feel the power and the strength of something. So she usually ends her affirmation that says, I'm a daughter of Africa. Like the Sankofa bird, I look to my past, draw from my past, and look forward to my future. And so those kinds of things help young people recognize that they are a part of something greater than the moment that they're in. But affirmations alone are not enough. Self-esteem, having a strong self-esteem, is not enough. In the book, I really lay out the importance of the second half of it, which is self-efficacy. And efficacy is about changing things in the world. So self-esteem is about changing things about yourself and bolstering yourself. And that kind of self-work is really valuable. But if you ask, all of the research tells us that Black and brown girls don't have a self-esteem problem. What they have is a self-efficacy challenge. And efficacy is about changing things external to you. So what happens if the classroom is a troublesome, racist, sexist, classist space? Do you feel like you have the power to bring yourself and others together to make that change happen? What happens when you're faced with issues in the world? Do you feel like you can do that? Or do you put your head down and say, you know, I just need to mind my own business? And we have to start to do both. We have to have our children feel good about who they are, but we have to have them actualize their power to feel like they can make these changes. Because once they do that, it feeds a kind of different part of self that leads to being able to create societal changes. And that's what we want, especially in a country as racist, sexist, and homophobic as the United States.
You said something earlier that we don't want grumpy leaders.
We don't want grumpy, sick leaders.
Grumpy, sick leaders. Can you, in hearing everything that you're talking about, and you start as a parent, I'm a parent of a young Black woman, and, you start to hear all of the things that, the work that needs to be done. How do you make sure that the work that needs to be done doesn't become burdensome and somehow, make the individual jaded and as you pointed out earlier, a grumpy, sick leader?
Yes. So we love and have had a lot of grumpy, sick leaders. We have people who have brilliant ideas, are really great at the task of legislative action, even community organizing, but inside, they are struggling. They're struggling with their own health, in their social relationships are really damaged. They have no levity about them because the world is so challenging. This book challenges that idea. It says that we have to really think about joyfulness as a pathway towards leadership. What we don't want is a set of leaders with high blood pressure, heart disease, depressive symptomologies, or clinical depression, or
stress toxins and all of this.
This will not help us because what happens is the burden is not evenly shared, right? The idea is the way that we have cast leadership is to suggest that it is almost like it's a calling from God. And some of us get to lead the world and make a difference in the world, and the rest of us get to be bystanders. This is not the case in the way that I've talked about it and in the work that I do. So I train girls to say, even if you want to be a photographer, you want to be a dancer, you want to be a biochemist, each of us have a responsibility to contribute using our skills and talents, but we must do so in a place that honors who we are fully and completely. So in the book, I talk about adverse childhood experiences. So in our experience of being people of African descent, especially in the United States, is that there's systematic things that have made our childhood structurally adverse. Family interruption, poverty, homelessness, chaos, noise delay, all the rest of those things, alcoholism, all of
What's
those
noise
things.
delay? I've
So,
never heard that term.
well, not so much noise delay, but like excessive noise. So
Oh,
neighborhoods
right, like
that
sirens, gunshots, people yelling, people
every-
outside arguing, constant noise, loud music, just loud all the time.
the loudness of urban or poor spaces really does
Construction, trucks,
affect
all
every
of it.
the Bronx.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
and so these things make it difficult to find this quietness. So in the book, I have people do a checklist called Check Your Adverse Childhood Experiences. And in the United States, about 1/12 of the population have adverse childhood experiences. But among people who are considered racial minority, that number is greater. If we don't attend to those things very early on, what happens is that we want to make a difference. You always see like people say, well, you know, I used to do drugs and I really want to go back into my neighborhood and I want to help people recognize that drug is trying to kill us, right? But they haven't attended to everything that's inside of them. So they are not particularly healthy. They can be supportive. But what I'm pushing for us to do, especially as caregivers, is to begin with the circle of self, right? But not stay there. To recognize that self needs to be healthy, and that healthy self is we use that energy to help our communities, rather than thinking our community is ill and I'm smart, I'm interested, I'm this and whatever, is that's how I'm going to go out and help. And then we see these crises in our leaders. We see them being physically, mentally, and spiritually unhealthy. But what we want to do is to create something else. We want to avoid burnout of our leaders. And we want to avoid them being really susceptible to all of this capitalistic craziness that happens where they're, I have to feed my family. I've got to do this. I've got to do that. And so the agenda that I started with, I'm not going to keep it. So we avoid burnout by really beginning to think and take stock, to answer Ibro's question, take stock of who we are. Are we actually healthy? As a parent, are you healthy? Are you joyful? Right? You want this for your child, but it's much like saying, I don't eat my vegetables, but you should too.
Yeah. Do as I say, not as I do.
And that model is not going to create any kind of sustainable leadership that will allow our communities to move forward.
And that seems very, that seems like a basic thing that everyone should be attempting to grasp, right? Because when you start talking about leaders, I don't know if everyone's brain is wired to see themselves or see what they're doing with their young person, who they're taking care of, as preparing them to be some sort of leader. I think a lot of parents that I come across are trying to make sure that their kids are healthy and happy.
Yes.
And whatever that means. And it sounds like in this book, some of the basics are just about healthy happiness and making sure that you're stopping the cycle of trauma and the bad habits that we have as a society.
Yeah, and that it starts with you. So I'm very clear. The sentence that is repeated in the book is, if you want a healthy, change-making kid, a leader, a happy, healthy kid, you have to be a happy, healthy parent. Is that the assumption that has happened with a lot of people is like, I'm not it, but my kid can be it. And just think about how much pressure that is for a kid to feel like, I need to be what my parent is not, right? It's really deeply unjust. So sometimes people look at me and Marley and they say, oh, Marley's able to do all these things. How is she able to do it? Is because it is the work that I do. It seems to me that it is better to be a doer, and the science support it, is that if you do it, then your child has the skills and talents to be able to replicate it. But if you don't do it, then your child is left out there without the supports that they need, the emotional and social supports. And that is deeply unjust. And I don't see how that really does create the kind of peaceful harmony that we want our children to have. We can have them have performative harmony, right? Like kids smile all the time. Kids know how to play us. They're like, but they're not really happy. And it isn't until, trust me, you all have young people, when they get to the teenage years that you begin to find out they'll drag you of all the things that you didn't do to help them become the happiest that they can be.
Right. And even if you're doing all the great work, speak on this too, because I feel like I talk to a lot of parents who want to be perfect and they want their parenting to be perfect. They want to be perfect. They want to read all the books and take all the classes. They want to do everything perfectly. And I think that that's admirable, but is it realistic?
No, there's no perfection. First of all, I really, like I had a lot of fun making my baby, right? Like a lot of fun. And that is probably the most fun you're going to have, right? Parenting is super challenging. And the difficulty with notion.
Wait, did you just say you had a lot of fun making the baby? I'm sure you
I
was getting
did.
popping, right? That's how Marley got here.
I had a lot of fun making her, but that was the end of the fun. So, a part of the reality, and I think you both know it, is that each day they challenge you. Like my daughter has really made me a better person. Like my inner asshole has had to find a respite.
Yeah, man.
Because
put that on the side. Go sit down somewhere. We need patience, foresight, love. You know what I mean?
Just really so much. But I do think the notion of perfection, people don't think about how harmful it is. Learning to make mistakes and being comfortable recognizing that you have to rebound from mistakes is one of the many gifts of parenting. The challenge, I think, for caregivers is that they don't talk about the mistake. They will say to their friends, to their family, I messed up there. But they actually won't tell the kid, and they won't process it with the kid. So the kid understands that you're human. We see a lot of, in the research, in my own work, I'm sure you've experienced it, where like you really took a L, right? Like your response was out of pocket. I used to say that I should have called this book One for the Couch. Like, I'm like, oh shit, she's gonna remember that one. When you talk to her, or when you talk to your kid, you begin and you tell them, like, really, I got mad because of this. I took that too far because of this. They start to see your humanity, and that your children seeing you as a full human allows them to be a full human. Because this is my concern for Black and brown kids, is that we're trying to create superhumans, which is dehumanizing, right? We always say to white folks, right? Like, you need to see our full humanity. We're happy, we're sad, we're joyful, we're this, we're that. And then in our households, we constrain Black humanity. This, to me, is fundamentally unjust, and it's actually how it gets replicated. Is that
it also has a deep history rooted in survival.
Yes,
because our parents wanted to equip us with these superhuman abilities to overcome all of the obstacles, knowing that we were going to potentially, at best be oppressed and at worst be killed.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? And so yeah, it's kind of unpacking, and understanding why we are that way, that we want this exceptional superhuman from our children.
Yeah. And that, again, if we talk to our children about even our clothing, right? Like many of us want our children to look beautiful, is that's not because you're somehow vain. Historically, if Black kids were in public spaces and they were being under the white gaze, they had to look a certain way. And if they didn't look a certain way, they could be removed from their families. The extent to which we can talk to our children about why we want them to not look that way or another way helps them to make sense again of what is happening in the society. What are the real issues that are shaping their parents' responses to them? And the more we kind of keep this narration open with children and explain to them our actions, is we know that will help with their language. We know that helps with their sense of self. We know that helps with their humanity. So in the book, I give a set of assignments that you can do at the end of each chapter to help you recognize and get into your own sense of joyfulness, and look at the things that you are doing that will amplify your connection with your children, and also help them to discover their own passions and interests. And what do they see as social injustice? Because my own daughter again, I am not a kid in school, so I would not have known that there was such injustice in terms of books. And now we have this crazy case of banned books. But it is in talking with her that I had a sense of what she wanted to do to contribute to the world. And I have my own set of things that I want to contribute. And I really want caregivers to recognize that if you want to change the world, your greatest locus of control is the way you parent your children.
Dr. Janice Johnson Diaz, Parent Like It Matters, How to Raise Joyful, Change-Making Girls. Young baby Light over there, Kenza Luce, Laura's daughter, my daughter, ECIL. You know, we doing our work here, and we thank you, doctor, for coming and sharing with us and sharing your book and also sharing your daughter with the world too. Like it's all amazing.
She's off to college. Y'all can have her.
Wait, where's she going now?
Well, she has been accepted to Yale.
Yeah, of course. Ivy League.
And she's waiting for some other responses. Yale needs to give us more money, just in case they're listening. I will tell you all now, college is a grip.
It is.
So, but I'm excited. I'm excited for her journey and for what comes next. We have some cool surprises coming up for the family. We're off to Super Bowl, so that's going to be a fun pre-college trip.
Well, you guys send our love to the team, and thank you for your time today. Go check Parent Like It Matters from Dr. Janice Johnson Diaz. Thank you for your time today, doctor.
Thank you, doctor.
Thank you. Happy parenting.
Thank you.